Welcome back to New Persuasive Words. I'm Scott Jones.
And I'm Bill Bohr.
Bill, how are you this evening? What's going on in the world
I'm
of Vermont?
well, very busy the last couple of days. We're going on vacation, and
I thought people moved to Vermont to get away from it all.
well, you were constantly criticizing my level of activity, which
you're too active up there. I don't like any of it.
I think we've known each other. We've known each other for 20 years, over 20 years, and I think
I don't know.
You've consistently told me I do too much. You've told me
you do too much. You do too much. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's coming from me. I mean, so that's not. I'm not a good barometer. I like when I look at the animal kingdom. I like the sloth. I'm like, no, that is living.
They're so yes.
They're fierce though.
They are.
But I'll just say, I was in a clubhouse room today.
Oh, nice.
And the title of the room was.
By the way, that sounds dirty. It sounds dirty.
Should the president defend the Constitution?
What? That was a.
I said because this particular room has a Facebook discussion group, a messenger discussion group that accompanies the room where people can banter forth and prognosticate. And I said, I guarantee someone in this room is going to say that when Trump said, I don't know, that he really is talking about second and third article conflicts. There'll be some apology for this, as if Trump is really a constitutional scholar and he's really parsing all this out. I was right. The guy who ran the room called me right after. Somebody said it. That was somebody's defense, that what Trump was talking about was real. It was not whether or not in general the president has to defend the Constitution, but in this instance is defying this court order, is not acting as the executive to bring back this person that the court has said you've violated their rights and due process. That really what he means is this is a trampling of second article powers by the third article subject. I first off, I predicted it, and I hoped that I would be wrong. I hope that no one would say something like that. But this goes to show you the real apologists. These people make Josh McDowell. Josh McDowell be like, man, now that's an apologist.
It's a real apologist.
I was astounded, and then was quoting Thomas Jefferson, who let me just say, with the problem with Jefferson on quoting Jefferson on the Constitution, Jefferson said every 19 years the whole thing should be ripped up. If it was up to Jefferson, we'd have no Constitution.
Well, that's good. It's providential that he was in France, right?
Right, exactly. Although writing to Madison, I suppose.
Yeah.
Back and forth. So, oh God, it was so pathetic. I thought, thankfully, only one person really, I think, said that. Everybody else just thought it was Republicans and Democrats. All thought this was pretty easy.
Well, I mean, Trump cannot be an expert both on the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution.
Look, I think it's a document of tremendous unity and love.
I love when they bring in the executive orders, the 100 days. What's this one? What's this one? This is sir, this is Stephen Moe. This is an executive order limiting the number of interracial couples on TV.
Yeah, I know. You see them cooking dinner. One's got the braids, the other's got like the Dockers, and you think, what do they talk about? Come on.
Well, I guess the question is, will Alcatraz be refurbished in time for members of the Trump administration to be sentenced there?
I want to say, I think The Rock. What year was that made? The 90s, right? The movie The Rock.
Welcome to The Rock.
That's a great movie. It still holds up. I watch that movie a couple times a year. I think. Remember that one phrase where the one big black Marine's there, and he's like, he says, do you like Elton John? He says, I don't like soft ass shit. So that's too bad, because you're the Rocket Man. Rocket There's so many great lines.
It is
in that movie. I might watch that movie tonight, Bill.
It is a great guilty pleasure.
I have no guilt. It's just a pleasure. There's no guilt for me.
Well, okay.
It's a pure pleasure, pure absolute unadulterated. You know what else is pure pleasure? Suck it, RFK. Here's a Coke Zero, completely carbonated. I'm drinking for those who can see it.
Here you
drinking a Coke Zero, and it's fantastic, RFK. Come take it out of my dead, cold, clammy hands.
This is where he stands. Here I stand. Here I what would Scott Jones die for? Coke Zero. I love it.
20 ounces of pure carbonated bliss. RFK, keep your hands off my Coke Zero.
Bam.
I'm passionate about it. I love soda.
I hear that. Yeah.
I love soda, and Coke Zero is a revolution, and it does taste just like regular Coke. I mean, it's Diet Coke.
No, I would if I don't drink, hardly drink any soda anymore. But if Coke Zero is an option, that's one I go for. I would concur. So, well, you sent me something you want to talk about tonight, which
I did, which we had talking about
for a while,
a couple weeks ago. I had put it in the queue.
Yes, in the queue.
And before you go to Italy, I thought this was.
By the way, my future episode is how effing stupid can people be? That's
no. I was going to say one last episode in case your plane goes down. But if the plane goes down, I'll just program ChatGPT. I'm like, give me Bill's lines. I'll get an AI. I'll get a deep fake AI, and I might be running the show with you gone. I might just have an AI. I wonder if the fans will hate the AI.
I'll be like Westworld. We won't be sure. And what if it's like Westworld? What if my AI guy murders you and replaces you with an AI guy? It could be many episodes of this. Yeah,
many
go on for perpetuity or perpetuity. Perpetuity.
So we're going to talk about
happy Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo. Or as they call it in the Trump administration, May 5th. There we go. So we still don't have a pope, so it's just, I'm pulling for Cardinal Dolan.
All right.
I like Dolan. I'm watching some of his.
He really handled that Trump question really well. Good asshole.
What? I didn't hear. What did you say?
No, he's the guy who was he's a MAGA guy, Dolan. I
didn't know Dolan was a MAGA guy.
Dolan, the guy from New York?
Yeah, I didn't know he was MAGA. I didn't know that.
The Archbishop of New York.
I know Trump likes him. He says, I don't know who's going to be Pope, but we've got a great cardinal in New York. He's fantastic.
Yeah, no, he's not the best face of Catholicism.
He's good on Instagram, dude. He's good on Instagram.
Oh, all right. There we go. That gets you right to heaven then.
I mean,
he's good. I bet Volcano because he is good on Instagram. He does not say his prayers, and he sucks up to totalitarians. But boy, can he put a post
Bill,
on Instagram.
in this day and age, that might be the most important criteria. That's not nothing. Being good on Instagram is not nothing.
He embarrasses his own parishioners. So let's move on.
Well, I'm just saying he's good on Instagram. I'm not. I'm just telling you a fact. All right. I'm not saying he should be Pope. I'm just saying this is something you can't dismiss. Social media.
All right, guys. I called you together. I want to give keys to the kingdom to one of you. So which one?
How many followers do you have on Instagram?
Followers do you? Oh, Thomas. Bam. Forget it, Peter. Thomas just beat you.
You know what? I'll tell you how many Dolan has. Dolan followers, Instagram. Let's see how many followers he has. Dolan has. Oh no, that's the Dolan twins. Sorry, I don't even know. Wait, the Dolan twins, whoever they are, have 3 million. Okay, Timothy Cardinal. No, all right. The Dolan twins, maybe they should be Cardinal for Pope. Cardinal Dolan has 56,000.
There we go.
Who are the Dolan twins, by the way? Who are at 3 million?
Yeah.
These are two dudes that I won't be following. two goofs living life and recording it.
Oh,
by the way, did you see it in Philly the other night? There was at Barstool Bar on
Oh, I
Sansom
saw. I
Street.
did read about this today. Yes.
There was a bottle service table, and the bottle service had a sign which is printed up. So it was somebody from the restaurant had to authorize this, I presume.
Yes.
Said "F the Jews" and not with that abbreviation. So Dave Portnoy, El Presidente, as they call him, of Barstool Sports, who's Jewish himself, freaked out. And
well, it's good. He found something to take a stand on. Very
and
nice.
you know what he's doing? It's very interesting. So rather than ruin these kids' lives, I'm paying for them to go to Auschwitz and get anti-Semitism education. So he's flying these guys, these guys to Auschwitz. So, which I think actually is kind of a virtuous response.
It's a redemptive response.
It's a redemptive. By the way, have you ever seen his pizza evaluations, David Portnoy?
I haven't watched that. I used to listen to that years ago. I haven't listened for a while.
He's awesome. He does it like on Instagram. I don't know how many followers he has, but more than Cardinal Dolan. And he just goes he grabs a slice. You know the rules. He takes a bite and he evaluates the pizza right there. It's very good. They're very interesting. They're very good pizza reviews.
Well, I feel strongly about pizza like you feel about Coke Zero. So
he does. Well, I would.
We do not have great pizza in Vermont. So anyway.
They do have great pizza in Philadelphia.
Yeah, they do.
So, Bill, let's get to the time. We've meandered around for 11 minutes and 30 seconds. So Paul Zahl wrote a book called Grace in Practice years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I forget when this book came out in, I don't know, 2000s or something. And the subtitle is A Theology of Everyday Life. And what he's trying to do is take what he sees as sort of the old story. He thinks a sort of grace-centered Augustinian / Lutheran Western approach to the gospel. I mean, he's not shy about.
Yeah, and by the way,
this is a brand name.
Yeah, and let's not assume that Augustinianism and Lutheranism are the
same.
It's Augustine through the eyes of Luther, right? Yeah.
Right. He would say that this is the strain for him runs through St. Paul, Augustine, Luther, I guess Cranmer, maybe, I don't know. So Paul would think that.
No, not Cranmer. He would be more Calvin.
Well, yeah, right. He mentions Cranmer in the book.
All right.
Yeah. So, but you do have that sort of Lutheran, this kind of theology in some of the collects in the prayer book.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Well,
actually, Paul Zahl wrote a great book on the collects.
Well, remember, what was it? The White Horse Inn? Those early Anglican, or they were English reformers. Almost all of them were martyred, but Tyndale was one of them. I forget.
Now there's a podcast called The White Horse Inn, which is run by Michael Horton, who's all of 5'5" or 6". He's a wee man. Great guy. I like Horton a lot.
Yeah.
I've had him on Give and Take, and he's a very, very nice guy.
Yeah. Very right. So, but it taps into.
I don't know why I threw his height in there. That's always his height for some reason always stands out to me. For a big towering theological figure, he's comes in a small package. I'm just saying these things. I don't know what's going on, but it's separation anxiety I'm having from you going to Italy. That's what happens to me when you're out of my time zone consistently. I fall apart. So, all right. So Paul wrote this book, and the first sort of, I'd say 75 or 80 pages are him going through basically this kind of Western Lutheran theology. He talks about free will and the lack thereof. He basically fleshes out sort of points of Calvinism, as I recall. I haven't looked at the first section in a little while. Then he gets into substitutionary atonement, small section on the Trinity, but he basically gives this short, systematic framework where he sees, as he distills what he thinks is the essence of the gospel, and very well illustrated. I mean, PZ is a sort of aficionado of pop culture, loves the Twilight
Mhm.
Zone, things like that. And so that section of the book is
And
quite
Burton,
well illustrated.
Burton Cummings, right?
Yeah, all sorts of stuff. And then he goes on to say, okay, so he says very interesting. He says this is a unitary field theory almost. He's I want a theory of everything here. So I'm trying to show that if this is true, this theory, then it should be true everywhere. It should be true in every aspect of life. So he talks about grace in marriage, grace in family, grace in parenting, grace in war and peace. And he has a section, grace in politics. And it's interesting because he is quite critical of his own sort of two kingdom Lutheran tradition, where he thinks that this is actually the two kingdom understanding of Luther, that law reigns in public life and in government, and grace reigns in the church, right? That these two spheres are distinguished, and never the twain shall meet, sort of. He thinks this is bankrupt. He thinks this is a big problem in Luther. And he says, I love this. He says, an illustration of this approach came during my time at Tübingen. A distinguished theologian and Luther scholar gave the following as a sort of epigram. In life, we believe in grace. In the examination room, law. That shocked me. It seemed dualistic and compartmentalized. The shock has not worn off. This theology of everyday life, his book, his project, this theology of everyday life, this understanding of grace applied attempts not to split the kingdoms. The idea here is of a unity, a single approach to the entire reality of moral life and human relationship, a full field theory that seeks to account for all the data using a single premise carried to its full consequence and effect. And then he says that the Luther's two kingdoms theory is the least credible section of Luther's theology. He calls it a well-meaning attempt to keep some idea of human distributive justice, even while the grace of God is offered pride of place in eternal or ultimate justice. Thinks it basically is a rationalization.
Well, historically, there's a lot of evidence to support the disaster of that position. Not only, in Luther's own life, right, time with the peasant revolt, but certainly it was appropriated with the Nazis. So, yeah, I would agree with him. I don't, I think it is one of the more unfortunate parts of his thought. Yeah.
So he rejects two kingdom theology. He also rejects Erastianism, term I hadn't heard in a while. I don't even think I remember what it meant. This theology also rejects Erastianism, which is a technical term for state control of the church. Erastianism, Zahl says, sometimes sounds good, especially if it suggests a kind of Christianization or baptism of secular society. This is the sort of idea that T.S. Eliot embraced for a time, as in his 1939, The Idea of a Christian Society. I would put an asterisk by that. I don't know that that's the case or not, but I'd have to go look. Maybe. I put a qualified maybe in that. So Zahl doesn't like Erastianism or established churchism. He thinks that it basically leads to serious problems, usually compromises with a church.
Like his communion. You mean the Anglican tradition? Yeah.
Here's a great quote. He says, on the one hand, the Erastianism of the distant past, as well as its vestiges today, like the current establishment of the Church of England, made Christianity captive to the propulsive issues of the day, of the world, which vary from decade to decade, but are always victorious in the short term. And then he says, Bill, that the political life of Christianity has gone in two directions. Anytime it's two directions, it's going to be simplistic, but
right.
For the purpose of getting the gestalt of the thing, sometimes you got to be simple. Either Christianity has been forced into conformity by the issues of the age, or it has withheld its pertinence and potential benefits that might make the world a more compassionate home. The alternative to the two positions is not a balance or middle space. The alternative to the two separated positions is a positive political philosophy that is comprehensive and knows no exceptions or variances to the influence of grace on every aspect of life. These are not nuanced
No.
statements
Well,
here.
how would that look? So I mean, we know how the other two look. His dialect there. So how does that how does this look in the public square?
Well, Bill, I'm glad you asked. Let me answer as Paul Zahl. I feel like I'm ChatGPT right now in the voice of Paul Zahl. He lays out, he sketches it out this way. He says the main features of a political philosophy of grace are equality versus fairness, gifts rather than entitlements, and personal acquiescence rather than the struggle for one's rights.
Oh.
Now, there you go. That's what it looks like.
But so that position could never vote for Donald Trump, right?
Well, I mean, I think Paul may have voted for Donald Trump. I don't know who Paul voted for. I've never asked him.
Right. All right.
He did say in 2016 that Trump was a breath of fresh air, a breath of the spirit, and a breath of freedom. And I think what Paul was saying there, and he might not be wrong in this description, that well, I mean, I'm saying in that I think some people reacted to Trump this way, right? In that,
all right. That some people projected that upon.
Yeah. The Trump that Trump's. Now, this is interesting too, right? Because Bill Maher, one of the things that people esteem and extol about Trump supporters, many sort of normal Trump supporters, people that are your average Joe Sixpack, whatever. You'll hear, well, what's refreshing about him is he's authentic, right? He just says what he means, and that sort of thing. Now, what's interesting is Bill Maher's revelation after his White House dinner with Donald Trump and Kid Rock. Hey, Picture is a great song. That challenges that, right? Because he said, I didn't hang out with this monster. I didn't hang out with a crazy person, which led Bill Maher to say, maybe then the crazy person thing is an act, right? It's just a pro wrestling persona to draw, which really challenges, right? I've thought this for years, actually. I thought when people say he's authentic, I say, I think he will say things that are politically incorrect. I'd acknowledge that. But is that authentic, or is that just playing to the crowd, right? I mean, is Trump's sort of personality,
or is it just being a pig?
Well, I mean, maybe, but see, I tend to think that a lot of it is staged. So I don't think I think what people praise.
I think it used to be staged. I think he's become the act.
Maybe, and that may be the case too. He may have buried himself in the part, but I think at least 30 years ago. In 2016, I saw a guy that looked to me like he was sort of putting his finger in the air, licking his finger, putting there, see where the wind was blowing,
right,
and kind of playing like so. That's where I saw Trump. Well, I still see Trump this way. I think largely as someone that follows trends, not makes them. Right,
yeah.
like that Trump largely. I don't think Trump created the conditions. Or like certain great men of history, right? Kind of are people that grab hold with both hands and create cultural trends and move just by force of will and rhetoric and personality.
Right. But those are very rare.
It's very rare, very rare. Yeah. But it happens, and I don't think Trump is one of those. I mean, I think Trump is someone that the moment created the space for him, and he kind of responded. He kind of responds to what I think he thinks his base wants to hear, right? So which isn't necessarily leadership, it's polling.
Well, yeah, and I also I can't remember if it was either Johnny Weissmuller who played Tarzan back in the 40s, or the guy who played the Lone Ranger. but like in their latter years, when they were kind of senile, they like the guy, I think it was the Tarzan guy, because he would periodically, like in the retirement community, just do that Tarzan yell and freak everybody out because he'd be, which would have been awesome. That would have loved to see that. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
But
Fantastic.
he had become the line between the character he played and who he became, that line blurred, which that actually happens a lot, right, in history.
That
right?
happens on this show with us. I don't know what play. I don't know what we're doing anymore. About episode 130, I lost track of that.
But okay, let's get back to it. So what would a great?
I just want to say one thing that Trump is not mirroring, where actually his conviction is the tariff thing, which is destroying the global economy. But that's the one point of conviction. That's the one thing. That's Trump's Wittenberg. That's here I stand. I can do no other. And it's going to ruin the global economy. I mean, I was watching something. I think it was on Threads or something. It was an interview. I forget from some financial outlet that I don't follow, but it was the guy who's the executive director of the LA port. And he's
it was on Bloomberg.
Yeah, it was on. And he was just saying, it's the shipments. It's like down like what 50%, 60% or something. It's something insane. It's just like the port's going to be empty next week. So that's the one point where Trump is actually not mirroring his base. He said, "Here, everybody, follow me." And then, wow, it's not good.
Well, okay, so let's get back to Zahl's point. I got us off the track a bit, but
yes, you did.
So a grace-driven body politic. Give me something that what would that be? Give me an example where that happened. Would it be, I don't know, the Shakers or something, or like the no, not the Shakers, but the oh gosh, one of the Anabaptist groups. It sounds kind of Anabaptist to me. So
now because he's not an Anabaptist.
No, I know, but this idea that a grace infused approach to politics.
You know what? There's a phrase that, as I reread this chapter today, I did not.
The Bruderhof is what I was thinking about, not the Shakers, but the Bruderhof. Yeah,
I did not see this in the text, and I swore it was there, but I could have searched it. But it might have been something he said in a podcast that I'm imputing to the text. But this is if it's not in the text, it's fine, because he would not quibble with this, what I'm saying right now, because I know Paul. We both know Paul. Paul's been on this podcast. Paul would say that he says the direction of this political philosophy is generally leftwards, but within the context of a wise anthropology. And I've heard him say elsewhere, I'm sure, that it's a non-utopian welfare state. That something like that it would be left of Scandinavia. I mean, something
or
democratic socialism,
or the impulse of the Christian Socialist Party, at least in its formation. Yeah,
but non-utopian in the sense of it would not proclaim the kingdom of God. Doesn't think it's building the kingdom. It's got a chastening. It's got a horizon. It's non-utopian. It resists utopian ideologies. And he also says such a political philosophy envisions the distribution of human benefits as gifts to all and not as entitlements to some.
Well, that sounds like, really, it does sound like it sounds certainly like Winthrop. If you read the whole sermon, City on the Hill, that's what that was the vision of the Puritans and the initial settlement of the Pilgrims that became then the Massachusetts Bay Colony. That was the hope, right? That was the vision, which would make sense because that's a similar source from some of Paul's.
Maybe too Calvinist for PC Puritans, but yeah, I mean,
well, right, well, but it does well. I mean, I think certainly the best intent of Geneva and Calvinism was that, right? It was certainly, and you see it in some of the, not the shadow part, but some of the better parts of some of the Dutch Calvinism, and and some of the impulses of what the good, like Jonathan Edwards. Certainly, that would be. Would Jonathan Edwards be a good example of that?
Well, I mean, I don't know that Edwards. I've not read much on Edwards' political philosophy. I read on Edwards' relationship
Well,
to Enlightenment philosophy,
it
to
would be
aesthetics.
it would be baptized Lockean. Is kind of, if you
Me
want
and I know we
to,
might be getting closer. We might be getting close.
yeah,
But it's interesting though, because he says here, he talks about in the grace anchored philosophy of politics, all benefits accruing to the human beings are gifts and not entitlements. The only entitlement we possess is that of quote unquote the damned sinner. Luther on Psalm 51, he's quoting there.
well, I do agree that even the very name entitlement plays into fallen humanity. I mean, that's part of. I mean, the failure of the liberal educational project of the last, I don't know, 70, 80 years, all this energy putting into, if we just educate people, they'll become better people. If we
Yeah.
just spend so much energy on helping kids, all this energy goes into helping kids have good self-images. And this generation is one of the most anxious group of adolescents. Now, there's a lot of things going on with that, but all this energy, it either creates narcissists. Well, it creates narcissists with inferiority complexes.
Exactly. That's the worst of all kinds. Which could be a description of the president of the United States.
Well, it might
because
be.
he is certainly both a narcissist and has a massive inferiority. No one is that self-asserting without a massive inferiority complex, right? So it's the strange combination of the narcissism and the massively wounded ego.
It goes from where he came from to to what happens in the bedroom with him, right? It's all,
I don't know.
I mean, it's,
although Stormy Daniels said some very interesting things, including rolling up of the Forbes magazine with his picture on.
Well, but I'm just saying but isn't that, I mean, we play out our brokenness and our sexuality so often, right? Because it's such a core part of who we are.
Do you know, I played for someone.
You prayed or played?
I played for someone for first time 2 days ago. My friend this guy had not seen it. He had never seen the Billy Bush tape and did not know that came out like weeks before the election.
Right.
I played. I said, and you know what? Trump got to be president and Billy Bush went into exile. Talk about Rene Girard and scapegoating.
Oh, right. Well, also talking
Billy Bush had to go into the wilderness just for listening.
Well, Trump didn't die for our sins. Trump's been empowered because of our sins.
No, Trump says it's the opposite of Jesus, right? You suffer for my sin. You say take tariffs.
But
you're going to suffer for my sin.
No, I mean, it's like somehow if we elect our shadow side, it makes us not as bad people. I think it's a kind of inverted. You're right. It's a kind of inverted scapegoating, right? That's an interesting thing to think about.
I don't think Billy Bush just for what do you do? The thing is too, like, I have sympathy for Billy Bush because what do you? I mean, this guy's saying this stuff. You probably don't know what to say. You have no idea. It gets caught on tape, and I don't know.
Well, look at your girlfriend Sarah Huckabee. What good has it done her to be? Certainly didn't get her any extra aid for the poor people in her state who were killed. So no, I think it's an interesting. I just don't understand.
Although my girlfriend Tulsi has been disappointing me lately. When it came to her, when I was watching the cabinet meeting, when it came to her, my heart broke. I'm like, Tulsi, just pass. You can pass. Say, Mr. President, pass. Oh my gosh. But it is the Stalinism, right? Everyone has to outdo each other.
You do like your
in the obeisance, right? So Mr. in my department, Mr. I know agriculture's going well, but look at my department. You're right. You think you've kicked out the immigrants? Look what you've done to the terrorists, sir. I mean, it's just so test.
By the way, if any of you are therapists out there and want to give Scott a little free time on his attraction to totalitarian women,
What's
please,
not to love?
please.
That's right. I don't need it. I don't need anything. Just
I
if
might
you
be-
know any totalitarian women that are single and you want to send me their phone number,
I will contribute towards that therapeutic bill right there. No, I think there's a sense where I do. You and I've talked about this before. There is not a natural Christian political theory. There's certainly because it wasn't built for that, right? And I think it's an interesting thing when we try to do. I mean, we have to, right? Because on one level, as Christians in a at least for now a democratically free society, we are the magistrate. I mean, Romans 13 applies to us because we are the ones who are
right. We're all citizen.
Right. So there's a sense where you don't have what do I want to say? You don't really have the privilege to bury your head in the sand in our situation. Now, if we're in a totalitarian government, we don't have any rights or we have limited rights, then we have less responsibilities. We have less power. But on one level, it's kind of it's like Bart in Word of God and Word of Man, the impossibility of speaking of God, but we have to do it anyway. Well, there's there's a very difficult task in trying to come up with a Christian informed political philosophy. But in our situation, we kind of have to because we have the freedom and obligations to do that. So,
well, I'll tell you what, if I had to do this, I guess you're saying we do have to do it, but I like putting my head in the sand. I think if my head is in the sand 4 days a week, that's a great week for me.
Right.
I like the ostrich. If I was choosing a mascot for Team Sky, it'd be the ostrich. Just put the head in the sand. See, sometimes it's all right after you do that.
But I do think I agree with Paul's critique of the Lutheran idea of abdicating responsibility. In other words, I don't care if you are an auditor for the IRS or if you're a poll watcher or you're a member of ICE. If you're a Christian, you don't get to leave your Christianity at home. And I'm not saying there's an easy answer to what a Christian response is. I mean,
I think there's a lot of problems at churches that could be solved if certain Christians just stayed home, didn't go to church. No, that's a different thing. A lot of congregational problems.
Well, a lot of people
could be solved.
A lot of option people are taking, but I do think there's a sense where grace, Jesus is Lord, right? And so as a Christian, grace has to be what drives everything we do, right? It's at the heart of the one-way love that he talks about is actually, it's not a one-way love. It's a one-way initiated love that requires and expects a response, right? As I have loved you, this is how you are to love, right? That's the great commandment. So the Christian life.
Well, he would say that I think the reason why he would say grace is one-way love is because it's not that the response is part of the gift, right? So it's not as though, this is where he's a monergist, right? So this is
right.
This is not a synergy for him, the work of God. He actually says the term monergism somewhere in the book, I think,
which may or may not be theologically correct, but it's certainly.
For me, I'm a complete monergist.
Well,
110%.
All right, but we need to acknowledge that would be a minority,
as was Saint Augustine.
Well, but that would be a minority position in terms of worldwide Christianity.
Well, I care about one. I care about one branch of Christianity, Bill.
Which
that of Cornelius Jansen. Okay, and that's my team. So that's all. And the rest of the people, the non-Jansenists, can suck it with RFK as I drink some Coke Zero. Hear that sound, everybody? That's the sound of me exercising my constitutional freedoms. Suck it, RFK.
Here he stands. Yeah.
Here I
But-
stand, baby.
But regardless, I do think the fact is that grace is, it's all grace. As grace is the animating principle. And so this idea of whatever our politics, we cannot divorce them from what does love require. And we, even the very nature of when you say what does love require, it's a synonym to what does God require, right? For the Christian, what does love require is what does God require. And what does that mean to let the God in me live? And as Bonhoeffer says, what does it mean for the Christ in me to love the Christ in the other? So I think that absolutely, you don't have the option to leave that aside. So it applies.
And so
Yeah.
for Paul, right, on this, what it would look like for
Paul
PZ,
Zahl, not
Paul
Paul.
Zahl.
Paul.
Well, maybe they're in one accord. Now, what it would
I
look
don't
like
think so. Anyway, go ahead.
is again the building blocks of a low anthropology. So it's non-utopian, right?
Right.
It's rooted firmly in the grace of God, the sort of monergistic grace of God. So it's
Right.
this idea that compassion and solidarity are the overarching values, right? So that this is it's a politics of gift, right, and generosity,
Right.
It-
And
Yeah.
working towards the common good.
right, and where we see this, sort of, it's interesting because some people have said that you see this sort of paternalism in Max Stackhouse. You say you see it in Lutheranism a little bit, like in certain sort of Lutheran politics, like Minnesota. You would say you see this sort of Lutheran paternalism, take care of everybody kind of thing. But I think Paul, would say that. But that's by the way, with regard to the response, he says this in the chapter. He says, everything that the law requires is given back after it is given up. This is why St. Paul in Christ talked ever about the fruit of a changed life: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness. Galatians 5:22. Were never the prerequisites of a changed status. They were always the results of it. Thus, when you acquiesce to the loss of important things, God restores them. This is not quid pro quo. It is simply in the nature of loss. We lose, God restores. We acquiesce, God gives. We surrender, God waves the white flag of grace. And so that's where I think Paul thinks this is driven by not so much by assertion of rights, but reception of gifts, by surrender, by a posture that sees everyone as both worthy of condemnation and therefore worthy of compassion and grace. Right. That the flip side. He does say it's not fairness, and it's not. It seeks to be Kantian in his sense, comprehensive and equal.
Yeah. But one of the ways I've always thought of it is, as a Christian, I feel like I need to look at my neighbor's rights and my obligations.
You could say that.
Yeah. Yeah. In other words, for me, it's not particular. It could become, to use a, I think from Zahl's framework, if I am imposing obligations on my neighbor, it's a very, that very easily almost always turns into a kind of law. But if I think of myself as a follower of Jesus and what does love require, but if I look to my neighbor as the child of God, either the person who knows they're redeemed, or who is God's waiting to redeem, then I do need to think of what are their rights. It's not my job to say what are their obligations. And I think that actually is, in some levels, I think what we have going on right now, we have a kind of legalism driving. There's already this kind of, and it's so hypocritical, but nonetheless, there's a sense, well, these people don't deserve. They don't deserve what I have, even though my grandparents were in the same position they are, right? So there's this sense where, and the idea that the budget's going to be balanced on the back of the poor. I agree. There's a lot of inefficiency, and I am not sure that the government is the best way to deal with poverty and inequality. I'm equally, even more sure that the nonprofit world is woefully inadequate to deal with the major social problems of our world as well.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Michael Lewis Jon Stewart had Michael Lewis on his podcast.
Michael Lewis, so smart.
Yeah,
I mean, he has a great way.
He just wrote a book about two books about government. But Stewart said that actually the problems he thinks, and I think he's on to something here. The waste, fraud, and abuse that happens in government is because of the fear of waste, fraud, and abuse. And Lewis said this: when I was on Wall Street, the stuff we could get away with, you can't get away with any of it in government. And that he thinks actually the problem with government is not that it's so corrupt and lackadaisical. It's that the abuse it's so over scrupulous that it's so about averting corruption and averting that you can't make decisions that actually would be beneficial. That it's not as though that actually the problem is that there's too many checks and balances. That it needs more of the kind of freewheeling capacity to trust judgments and decisions, which is kind of counter to the whole everything Elon Musk and Doge. If that's the problem, then Elon Musk is exactly the wrong.
If you want someone in charge, if you think of any major entrepreneurial person in the world, and you want to put somebody in charge who doesn't waste things, Elon Musk would be the worst person in the world to put that in charge. Given how many companies has I mean, first of all, he never everything he has he's inherited or bought, right? Did he start anything that he didn't acquire? I don't know that. I mean, I might be wrong about that. But
Tesla, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but what's interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure. I may be wrong about that, but I think you're absolutely right. In other words, part of it's the classic example of one generation's reformed becomes the burden of the next generation, right? The bondage of
what you have to do. I mean, this idea that this government is just slush money all around. Like Stewart had Ezra Klein on, they were talking about like the broadband money that Biden had set aside to get rural broadband to the poor, right? Which is something everybody, right? Generally conservatives and liberals can agree on, right? Okay, we're all for broadband for the poor, for opportunity. It's a couple of years. There's not been one bit of like 2 states or something had made it to the final stage of all the stuff that you have to do. It's impossible. Like, I mean, this idea that you're just doling out the money, it's basically impossible to get this broadband money because that's how many strictures there are to getting it.
But yeah, I mean, the fact that there are 50 state legislatures on top of all the federal thing, and then the municipalities. And
don't you have one of the bigger ones in Vermont?
Bigger what?
State legislatures. Don't you have
It's very representative. Yeah,
like 2,000 or 3,000 people or something.
I think my brother-in-law is a member of the House, and I think he has like 1,800 constituents or something. It's something.
I'm moving
crazy.
Up there and running. I'm gonna run.
Oh,
I'd be fantastic in the Vermont legislature.
Oh my gosh, you would be.
I was just speaker. I was speaker in 2 years.
You were built to be a member of the Vermont legislature. Yes, you must come up here, and I will be happy to campaign for you.
I could knock on 1,800 doors. I'd be in no problem. I would say, look, I got Bill Bohr and Todd McGowan. That's all I need.
There we go.
So in conclusion, Bill, I think this is a story that Paul tells in the book that I think is super interesting. I'd forgotten this was in there. And he tells the story. He and Mary are going to
Mary's his wife.
A museum. Mary's his wife, a lovely person. He said a few years ago at the High Museum in Atlanta, my wife and I, we went there in hopes of viewing a fine collection of African-American paintings, several of which depict church scenes. What Mary and I found instead was an overwhelmingly assertive exhibition of contemporary photographs entitled "Here's Looking at You." The exhibition consisted of room after room after room of face shots of everyday Americans. It screamed identity, or rather the search for identity. I compared what I saw in Atlanta to the snapshots taken in Cambodia of the hundreds of thousands of young people who were soon to be shot. Each of the Cambodian photographs depicts the true case of the human race. Each picture is a heartbreaker that engenders the highest pitch of compassion from the viewer. Each picture is also highly individual. You want to reach out and touch each one and ask their subject, what are you feeling? Why have they put you here? Can't I help you? That to me is the foundation probably of Zahl's politics, or what it should be in the book. I mean, this is the kind of concluding illustration that, yeah, you look and see the shipwrecked individual and their need for compassion and grace, and that evocative reality leads you to say, hey, how can I help you? You know, what situation has got your back against the wall, and how can we marshal the goods we have in common to alleviate your suffering?
I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think actually that is an alternative that's not being offered by any political party right now. It might be an opportunity. I think what's going on right now gives the opportunity for the church to be the church, to be the hand of grace in this time.
Amen to that.
All right.
And
Peace, everyone.
Bill, I toast my Coke Zero to that.
All right.
Thanks, everybody, and safe travels to you, Bill.
Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Or May 5th, as we say in the Trump administration. Happy May 5th.